the experiment will be a community fireside chat. This means you will ask, someone of you will ask a question, and we'll see if someone else in the room can answer the question. Because every one of you is an engineer, or most of you are engineers and developers, so everyone has his special field. For very good questions and very good answers, you'll get some swag that we have here. So, who wants to start?
Okay, it's very simple. The answer is 42. What's the question?
We're still computing it.
What's my number? Okay, you get some sandal.
You're serious. You really get stuff from us, huh? You really get stuff from us.
It's a good question, so.
Okay, next question, please.
I'd be very interested to know if people have had experience with Dart and TypeScript and these next generation JavaScript-like languages.
That's a serious question. It's a serious question. Yeah, too serious. Can you repeat the question again?
Experiences with Dart, TypeScript, these sort of things. Has anyone used them? What have their experiences been? I want to know.
Is it an answer if I say, I have no experience?
Community answer the question.
Yes, yeah. I just have to answer your question, so. No, I don't have experience.
But the answer is you can ask the question.
Okay. I think Dart is a good topic we haven't covered in an event, and I still have the script of the Dart hackathon from the I.O. So I think this would be, if I could rework it, it would be a cool topic for a code lab in some of the next events. So if you attend regularly the GDG events, yeah.
Serious questions then. Same theme. Dart is very interesting potentially. Does anyone know if there are any plans to support it on the ARM processor? Which is the reason we decided not to go ahead with all of the plans for this hackathon.
ARM support.
Yeah.
What is the script language?
I mean,
no, ARM support for a Dart virtual machine.
For a virtual machine.
But Dart is basically the JavaScript VM, isn't it?
No, not at all.
It's got its own VM, but you can also compile it with JavaScript.
Yes.
Okay. I just know it from that side, JavaScript.
Yeah, we already compiled on a ARM machine, but the back end is missing to access the operating system.
okay. I never heard something about this. Maybe.
It says a discussion in the internet, and many people expect that there will be an ARM backend because it would be an interesting thing to have native Dart apps on Android phones.
May I have an idea? Vadim, can you start a document writing down such questions we don't find an answer for, and we can try to forward it to some Google engineers and may get answers for you.
Cool.
We can't guarantee something, but we can at least try to forward them the questions.
Next question. Why does he write it down if it's videotaped?
Backup.
So you don't have to go back
Searchability.
and search the video.
Stupid question. No.
Oh, it's dark.
Another question? Henry?
Question about Go language. It was about half year ago. It was introduced in ETH in Zürich, and then I've never heard about it so far, or anyone in this room have experience with this Go language? Or?
Yeah.
So there.
We're
You
using
have
that.
sorry.
We're using it at work for a new project
Okay.
since a few months. We are so far very happy with it. Other than that, is there anything in particular that you would like to know?
Just general interest in that Google introduced this language and so forth.
I'm on the Go mailing list, and the interest definitely seems to be growing. There are a number of commercial users now, like Ubuntu. Some of the Ubuntu infrastructure is being written in Go, and a couple of other companies. SoundCloud in Berlin, for example, they have a whole backend in Go. It's definitely being used, and I think it's very cool.
So what is it that, what makes it different from something traditional, if you've never heard of it?
All right, I'm not sure
In a nutshell.
how easy that is to put in a nutshell, but it tries to probably combine some of the advantages of a low-level language as C. It's very close to the machine, but with some modern features that you know from scripting languages like memory management. It's done for you, not like C. And it has static typing for type safety, but also with type inference, so you don't repeat, like Java repeat the types over and over. It's pretty close to the metal, so for some people it's maybe a bit too low level. It does not automatically convert between in 16 and in 32, you have to say what you want. But on the other hand, you know exactly what's happening on the machine. And then probably the one really new idea of Go is the concurrency features. It has built-in support for concurrency. It has Go routines, which they call it Go routines. It's a bit like threads, but they are extremely cheap, and the runtime multiplexes them on the operating system thread. And they are really, really nice to use. It's very easy to write concurrent code. That is pretty cool. The standard library is really good. That's my nutshell.
And they support ARM, so it's a perfect language if you want to write high performance applications on a small ARM platform, a Raspberry Pi, for example.
Also, there was a talk on in Google I/O regarding this topic, production use of Go, and some companies talked about how they use Go, and that video is available now, so you can watch it if you want to see how some companies, for example, Heroku, use it in production.
I could maybe add that at work we found it completely stable. I don't think we had a single crash of the Go runtime of the Go compiler.
General question to the Go language. Is there a demand that we would organize something with Go as topic, like more like maybe talk about Go?
An introduction about Go? What about introduction?
For tomorrow? Not for tomorrow, but I know that one of the Go dev reels will be here for 2 days, somewhere in the beginning of November. If there is really a demand from the community, I could tell him that there is the demand.
And this will be basically more introduction to Go. I think nobody has big experience except of you in the Go language. So if there's interest in Go,
So
introduction, how to use Go.
Who would come?
Who would go?
Who would go?
Okay. Yeah.
Next question?
What's a big feature you're missing in Android? No.
Optional permissions.
Optional permissions. Yes, please.
I am missing a list of devices that actually support the USB host API in the internet, where you can look up this device actually will work with USB host, and will also support the Google developed APIs. Since there are like devices faking support, it will tell you, okay, we are enumerating devices, and then they will actually give you an empty array back. And then customers will have a bad experience if they tinker around with the Arduino or anything.
Okay.
For instance, an oscilloscope. So that is a feature that is definitely, I think, is definitely missing. And it's not. We have a technical blog, and people there, like topic number one is people saying, hey, I tried to tinker with my Arduino Uno, and I hooked it up, and it doesn't work. And they have like really different devices, and they all claim like, hey, I have USB host, but they actually don't. So I'm missing that from Google. And also I am missing on the market the ability to respond to somebody, since it is only, if somebody writes a review, they have that feature in place for like developers who are anyways rich already because they have like Editor's Choice Awards. And they enable those guys to answer to comments, but it is much more crucial for small developers to answer to comments. This is like Google's best joke for this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would like to have untethered debugging, like without a cable. It would be nice.
There is wireless ADB.
There's that.
Yeah.
There's that for the. That's your reward.
That's your reward.
For Android devices as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some you have to be rooted, and for example you have no other chance on a Google TV, you have to use wireless because it's not a USB endpoint,
Oh.
Would like to have multi-user support. Sorry.
Well, it might just be me, but when I got my HTC Hero, I can plug it in and use it as a USB device. Then I got my tablet, plugged it in, and it's using an MTP protocol, and I use Linux, and that driver is just terrible, and I can't drag and drop files. I mean, AirDroid solves it, but
Yeah, that's correct. That's true. And all the new devices are supporting MTP.
Yeah.
There's TP protocol. That's a problem. Yeah.
I think you cannot do something about it.
That's
True.
the
They don't
manufacturer.
use ADB anyway. Push the files.
But you could improve the MTP driver on the device.
Okay, there's other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a design decision they made, and they have big explanations why, that are on some side understandable, but on the other side, yeah. Alright.
Yeah, I just talked with a friend before, and we talked about Bluetooth on Android. And it's completely buggy, and it's a complete mess, and we should, well, they should definitely address that finally, because I know those guys are busy with other stuff and new features. However, to leave the Bluetooth stack that buggy, you have devices crashing by doing simple API calls. And
But I think it's also, isn't it not more related to the device manufacturer?
no, it
than-
is
No,
not,
it's
because
framework.
you get it on Nexus devices as well. And they're using an open source stack, they're using the Blue stack.
Oh yeah.
And it's not finished.
And
And also Bluetooth pairing via NFC would be awesome if it would work, because users and pairing of Bluetooth devices, it's a mess.
I would want to see more devices with notification LEDs.
Yeah.
Since, it was introduced in Android since the first devices like the G1, then they dropped it, then they put it in the devices again, dropped it again. It's a really crucial feature. I would love to see more ASP phones. And I would love to see a working Wi-Fi Direct implementation, since right now Wi-Fi Direct sometimes even crashes the phone, so that you have to reboot it.
unless it's a feature.
Cool stuff.
What I miss most in Android is that the manufacturers are not forced to make their user interface optional.
They are now, at least.
I think it will come in next version. We'll discuss some.
Yeah, it's a rumor, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's wait for 29th
29th.
of October.
I think they already introduced that with Jelly Bean, that they have to have the Holo theme in their own.
integrated, but
Yeah.
still on the Samsung or on the HTC device, you got the whole framework around
Yeah, the user
it.
can select between the both.
And that slows down updates and a lot of other stuff with compatibility.
There was it's a blog post or something. I know yearly results by Motorola, and they said I would love to do more Android Near phones without all the custom crap, but the carriers want them to do it. So the Verizon somehow forces Motorola to do it, to have a bit more custom experience. That's what they said at least.
Okay.
In this way, I would like to have less fragmentation.
Keep on dreaming.
I think it's the same thing, so
Yeah.
it's horrible that you get on our Nexus phones the newest, and there are so many Android phones which never get the Jelly Bean or ice cream sandwich.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody asks me what Android phone to buy, I tell Nexus because it's the best choice you can do.
Even if it has no external storage, it's still the best.
Yeah, exactly. The one with long-term support, or I mean, not long-term support at all. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, from a user standpoint, it's multi-user support, and from a developer standpoint, somehow getting away from Eclipse, because Eclipse is a pain, and a lot of official devs now use IntelliJ, but it's difficult because, like, when you go away from the official stuff, you're getting behind. So, but they started to implement a new build system based on Gradle. Yeah. So hope it solves that problem. Yeah.
So just because IntelliJ was mentioned, for the hackathon, we get 3 professional license from JetBrains for any of their product to win.
Any more questions?
Something different than Android?
Yeah.
About App Engine.
What about Google Plus?
Or Chrome?
Or Drive?
Search.
Yeah. Who misses the weather back end or the weather hack?
Well, we had a great. I'm working in an internet agency doing our web pages, and we had this problem because we used a weather API, and our customers called us and said, "Oh, no weather is showing, no weather is showing," and we had to look for another one. But the problem is they did not really find one which is like the same. The others was hard to implement, and yeah, we had lots of feedback from the customers saying that they miss it. So yeah, crap.
There's a startup in Basel called MeteoBlue.com, which does superb physical weather models, and has a free API for developers to just plug in, and you can then customize it and put your own icons and shit around it.
Okay, and what was it?
MeteoBlue.
MeteoBlue. Okay.
Their forecasts aren't always brilliant, so they're good for 3 days, but
yeah,
that's enough.
If you want really, just out of interest, if you want really detailed weather forecasts, there's some very high resolution stuff where basically they take something like GFS, which is the American global system, and then do higher resolution stuff for certain areas. Go to soaringmeteo.ch for Switzerland, or meteo-parapente.com for France, and they get sub-kilometre grid resolution, hour by hour forecasts.
MeteoBlue supplies their modelling and their data. But the app is commercialised, it's not a free app. yeah, with a bigger grid system, meso scale, it drifts pretty fast. As soon as you've got a physical feature like a bunch of trees, and the wind direction changes, you get evaporative cooling, and it just makes complete nonsense of the physical weather pattern. But if you've got the data from the geo mapping and all this stuff, they can, in principle, just reduce it as much as you want to pay for processing.
Is it only my opinion, or is the Google Drive app crap? I'm not a big. I mean, I like the Google Docs and this feature, but the Google Drive application is far behind what Dropbox offers in quality, in the sense of quality and usability and how easy it is to use. I mean, I'm not using the app because I'm completely useless, but I use the Google Docs quite often. So
I think there was a big discussion on this on avc.com, which is a blog from America, a venture capitalist blog, where they had an extensive discussion on this, pros and cons, about a month back. What I think that the upshot of that was that the philosophy was very different. Dropbox isn't a solution, whereas Drive is an enabling technology on which you build apps.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of it as a file system with a file browser, which is a rubbish file browser, we could argue, there are then the apps you plug in on top of that, which support changing, and you could basically create a desktop experience on top of it if you wanted to.
Okay.
I think is the thinking. But I agree, it's totally unintuitive and ugly to use.
yeah, it's if you want to share files, it's not the same as Dropbox. It's my opinion.
Yeah.
Can you mount a Google Drive as a regular file system, like with SSHFS?
Yes. It's mounted as a. I mean, I know it from macOS. It's mounted a file system somehow, and you can write files to it. Yeah. I don't know how they mount it or how it's working, but it is mounted to the file system. You can use your copy methods and move methods that you usually like.
Which operating system is that?
macOS, and I think Windows is the
I
same.
think the official versions from Google are for macOS and Windows, if I'm not wrong, and for Linux there's an unofficial version really emulating, or not emulating, but building a file system on top of it. So you can use it as a usual. I don't have it in my head.
Search will tell us.
If I remember it, I'll tell you.
Yes.
Related to this, and this may be my lack of understanding, so correct me if I'm just talking nonsense. Wouldn't it be kind of interesting if you have Drive and you could actually apply it to your local machine, so like an offline Drive function? Okay, all sorts of algorithms and search stuff like that they might not want to give away for people to host themselves, which is what I mean. But I think it would bridge this gap between cloud type, cloud served apps versus locally hosted PC type environments. I don't know. Is that a stupid question?
Well, there's something similar. I'm not sure. You can, for example, you can offline edit your documents. You Google Docs. There should be a possibility, or that they're planning.
Just a link to site.
Yeah.
It's nothing contained in this file. It's a Google Docs document or a spreadsheet. It's just a link to site where
You can
enable offline docs, and then you can enable offline mode for the documents, and then you can edit them offline as well. And then when you go online next time, it's saved.
But this offline mode, it's only for Chrome, or it's just for all your file system?
I think they introduced it in Google Chromebook, and now I think they're offering it as well officially somewhere.
Yeah, but it's only in Chrome browser that supports that.
Yeah, Chrome browser, exactly.
Well, it works fine on my pad, right? Because if I've got like an electronic book and I'm going to some place where I don't have any internet connection, I can, in my fast internet at home, click on the use offline, make available offline thing,
Yeah, thank you.
And then it caches it nicely on your Android device, certainly, and you can then read that book off in your mountain cabin. That's cool.
Okay, I got a question. Why is it so hard to implement a multi-user function in Android? Because underlying is an Unix system which already has multi-user, and for tablet it would be great to just say I have a private one and one for the company, or just one for my kids.
Actually, it's already there.
Yeah.
So it's in the source code, and some of the customers like CyanogenMod have enabled this option. So right now you can access it with the command line, and you have different spaces for the private data for every user, so that works fine. Sometimes you have forced closes, but it's already there. I guess it's going to happen in the next version.
Yeah, and you have to take in mind the user separation on file system base. The user separation file system base is already in place for your applications. So there is a difference, so they had to build a layer between the interface and the file system again. Or else you would have trouble. Keep them normalized.
Cool, okay.
And drive as a hint, we had a discussion after Friday about driverless cars, and I would like the community have to make a poll. You have three choices. If there are driverless cars, would you trust it completely? No own driving, only use your laptop in the car? Second, they are laughing because we had this discussion, but I would love the whole community. Only the car is driving, you are not allowed to drive anymore, regulation you cannot drive. The other one, you want to drive, no driverless cars at all, or a mixture, you supervise the computer. So who's for the first choice? Only the computer drives.
It depends actually. Are all cars driverless, or will there be some driverless and some non-driverless cars? Because
all cars driverless.
All cars driverless.
Like a rule, humans are not allowed to operate.
I think there's an interesting fact, I believe, about this, which is fly-by-wire aircraft. Still, because humans are much better at behaving when they have to respond to a disruption rather than continually monitor. Fly-by-wire aircraft can still be flown by hand.
Okay, we can have the discussion afterwards. We make a poll first, and then we have a discussion, and then... okay, first one, again, only cars drive. Okay, second one, a mixture between car and humans. Okay, and only humans, you don't want any car to drive? Okay, that's good. So now discussion, okay.
I think a very useful thing about driverless cars, or self-driving cars, is that the car can move around without a human in it. So your car can drop you at work and then drive to your parking space back at home. Or, so in that case, there has to be an unsupervised, not even a human in the car.
Good point, yeah.
I think the other thing is that with clustering behaviours and road trains, the efficiency implications of this are absolutely enormous, because you can just put things almost into freewheel mode and turn them along.
Yeah, and save a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But you've probably read the blog post. It's an interesting observation. You take an aircraft, it spends most of its time working. It spends a lot of time in the air on tarmac. Cars, most people's cars, they're used for maybe an hour a day, and it's spending 95% of the time unused. If you have driverless cars, you can start sharing them. You need fewer cars. You don't need 2 car parking spaces. The same car takes your kids to school, takes you to work, picks the kids up after school, and during the day is used by the people to go shopping. It becomes a use of many fewer cars.
We have public transport again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then there are no reckless drivers anymore.
Less people die in traffic than.
Unrelated subject, should we make children walk to school?
Once all cars are driverless, it's
Any other questions?
huge.
Who wants a T-shirt? What's the question?
Which color?
You can change afterwards.
Yes.
T-shirt.
Oh, is there a bigger one?
Yeah.
No, big ones.
Who knows how many colors the
Never mind.
probe or
I thought it was three.
Yeah.
If you give me enough t-shirts, I might do it.
How many t-shirts do I have to take before I will actually start using them? Thank you.
Are you like hard green or airplane?
It's whether I'll be allowed to get. No, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Do I have questions?
Who has experience with like platform independent frameworks to develop on, or which one is the most promising?
For which environment? Or for what?
For example, you want to write an app and you want to run it on Android, iOS, and Microsoft Phone or whatever.
Phone gap, but you don't want it.
Very hard time doing that.
I used Titanium Accelerator, and it was the biggest pain in my whole life. Because you cannot make an application fit for each platform. It just doesn't work because UI has to be specialized. I mean, Titanium Accelerator is really famous for having memory leaks on iOS, so even if you only specialize on one platform, it doesn't work. And you can do a web app, that's fine, but don't do these native hybrid web app mixture things.
So there,
as you can see, so 600 Kinder. There's this famous startup, 600 Kinder from Berlin. They had Wunderlist, to do this application, quite famous. They based it on Titanium Accelerator at first. And they said it's hell, and they switched over to native code since they couldn't control everything. The performance was bad, especially with lots of list entries and those things. So on Android, you have a list adapters with this. You have view reusing and those things, and the HTML applications don't do it. So there are so many issues they have that they chose to drop all the hybrid stuff and just native on both platforms.
So this is why I saw some job description. We're looking for iOS developers.
So I mean, you have actually, because I was in this topic as well. You have quite of options. I mean, you have this Titanium side, which is JavaScript, but it's calling native UI. So you have a native look and feel, but behind it you have JavaScript, and you have to set the problems you told you. On the other hand, you have PhoneGap, which is only HTML5, and the limitation of having PhoneGap is that your app look like a browser, a website, you know. If you find with it that your app looks like a website, then maybe it's an option for you. But most of the people don't want to do it. So this is the other option. So you have HTML5 app which looks like a website more or less. Then you have something in between like Titanium, and then you have Mo SDK, which is C++ based, and you have also JavaScript and HTML5, which is it's a mixture between Titanium and PhoneGap. And this is also something in between, but it's also not the perfect solution. What is actually working quite good is SDKs for game development. If you're in this field, because there you have no native UI, you have no this list and all this special how we say special functionality from the operating system, which is different. Then you have quite a few options like Corona, like Moai, like so you have quite of options there, and they are quite successful. So there are a lot of companies using it. So for game development, it's a good option. And if you want to have an app which is more like your website, then I think it's okay for you to use PhoneGap. But most of the developers or most of the companies don't want to have an app which looks like a website, so they want to offer them something more. And it's actually a trap.
Just like that, there's another platform called Session Touch, which basically tends to make web applications look and feel like native applications. It's a disaster. It's the feel is only close-ish on iOS, and the whole way you basically declare your interface, and it's just impossible to debug.
I mean, it's also an indicator if you take a look at how many companies arise every week who offering cross-platform app development and one-click app development and app development machines and app development new interfaces. So this is kind of an indicator that nobody found the perfect solution.
The need is there.
Of course, the need is there, but I think the majority will, get used to HTML5. So, yeah, for many apps, HTML5 is fine. And it's just, making a wrapper. This is what actually PhoneGap does, and PhoneGap is quite successful with it. It's just a wrapper for HTML5, and you just making the HTML5 stuff installable, and having an offline cache or something like this.
How difficult is it to do HTML5 for phones with all the different device resolutions? You have to sort of it probably depends on the app, but you have to sort of go and sort of on the server say, okay, well, it's this kind of phone, I'll go and render the page this way, and if it's that kind of phone, you do it the other, or can you sort of do it all in CSS with selectors, or does it actually fit one size fits all?
No.
Actually, there's this what's it called? Responsive web design, right? Which is with CSS3. There is a CSS media queries, which you can say if the device width is 720 pixel and I think pixel depth is 2 point or whatever. You can say how your website should look like in the different angles or different sizes, and you work with EM or percent, and so the screen fits in or the web page fits into the screen.
I mean, it's still
well, there is kind of ES6 support. There's JavaScript and HTML5 JavaScript, which supports the Internet Explorer. Which is hard. It is, but Internet Explorer is just one.
But the biggest problem is not a technical problem. Technically, this is all solvable. The problem is there are totally different user interfaces. And this is not solvable. Like Android has the action bar, and you cannot do it via HTML. And it will never be a native interface. Will always be superior to a web interface. So and
you have to keep this in mind. And it's a very important thing is that the native interface will always look different than HTML5, and you never will reach a native look and feel and behavior. And if you're fine with it, and you know it in advance, and not afterwards if the application is ready, then it's okay.
You can get close to it, but I think you shouldn't even try to adopt a platform UI since, I mean, I don't want to have an iOS interface on an Android phone, I don't want to have the Android interfaces on iOS.
Exactly.
Not to talk about Windows Phone. So, I mean, you should try to do a neutral approach and just do something like Twitter Bootstrap or something, which provides you a modern UI but still feels good on a phone. And I mean, when we talk about fragmentation and screen sizes and those things, I guess web developers are more used to it than even the mobile developers are used to it, since they were raised with different resolutions.
Yes, Skype. How are we going to eradicate it?
Pardon?
Whatever app it is, a Trojan or whatever, that you can get something that looks like Skype but works and put it on people's Windows machines for them, so they can't tell the difference, but they have a working function, which is SIP enabled.
I didn't get it.
Okay, Skype is a pile of crap.
Yeah.
That's the short version.
Use Hangouts. Google Hangouts are far better.
But I'm just wondering the way of propagating this is to make them get them out there to Windows people so that actually you can talk to people who won't install some alternative. I guess you just got to get them to visit the webpage.
Yeah.
Good answer. This young lady needed something.
Google Hangouts works perfect. I use them with my family, even with my mother that doesn't have a clue about computers, so it works perfect and the quality is really brilliant.
The sound level stayed constant.
The sound level is constant, it works really, it's brilliant.
Are Google Hangouts hosted on a Google server or are they actually peer-to-peer? Since that is like a concern, it's a real concern, you know.
So they actually go to a Google server, so all they get transformed and downscaled and everything.
Because you know, depending on what meeting you have, you don't want that.
So on corporate base, you can use something like Adobe Connect, which is horrible because it uses Flash and stuff, but they have applications for different platforms and it works some kind of. So if you want to have this feeling of security and not like the issue with data on Google servers, you can go for Connect. It's alright, but I mean it has some of the same concepts. And in addition, it has nice screen sharing, recording, and those things that Hangout just added. But it's a bit more clunky. I mean, the nice thing about Hangout is it's easy to use and you can use it instantly. Like, I just want to have a Hangout and that's it.
Could you put a very lightweight encryption front end on Hangout?
You would have to do it before the webcam image reaches the Hangout application. You would have to have a webcam driver that does the encoding and decoding.
And then you've got the same problem, you've got to install it locally,
The other thing is, I'm not really sure, but is the Google Talk. Google Talk has a talk plugin where you know can chat to the same thing as a Hangout almost.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just now it's the same thing.
Exactly the same functionality. Isn't it like more like peer-to-peer?
No, actually they changed the version now. Actually, when you do a peer-to-peer video chat, they're actually now using the Hangout backend. Yeah. So and if you're Google Plus enabled, then you can actually add more people. If you're just normal Gmail user, for example, that video chat is just peer-to-peer, but it's still using the Hangout backend.
Okay, and peer-to-peer means, is there the Google server involved?
It's still involved, yeah, so it's the same thing. But it's the same thing if you use just Google Talk, it also involves the server.
Does Google Talk still work? I think it doesn't work anymore.
No, it just uses Hangouts, it's still called Google Talk. But the difference is if you are using Google Talk with someone who isn't using Google Plus yet, who doesn't have a Google Plus profile, then you just can't add more people to the Hangout. That's the only difference, really.
I'm not sure. Is it are there applications that use the XMPP protocol and doing video chat?
I know XMPP supports that. I mean, XMPP, Java, and those things were just made for text.
Yeah. There's an extension for XMPP called Jingle that supports, at least I know, audio calls, and as it uses the real-time streaming protocol, it probably should also be usable for video.
Is it going through the protocol?
Yeah.
It's like if pitching has some support, but it's horrible.
Yeah. But one missing feature for Hangout would be to privately record them. You can only record Hangouts there, but they are public there.
Any questions? Other questions? Oh, yes?
Google App Engine. I'd like to know if anybody has knowledge of a library that we can use to do joint queries on the data store. The data store doesn't support that. There are two libraries, Java libraries at the moment, that do kind of elaborate queries more than what we do with the native data store queries.
Well, I know that for App Engine, Google recommends using Nucleus.
Using what?
Nucleus?
Data
Nucleus. It's a
use.
Yeah, but it doesn't lift any of the limitations of the data store engine at all.
It's still limited to.
Yeah, it's still limited. It's just a layer on top of it, but you still cannot do any joint inquiry.
Okay, so that's actually because I mean the JPA and the JDO support joints, but if the underlying layer does, if it can't abstract this from the underlying layer, so I think that there were no frameworks who can support it. Then
like this morning, we were saying this morning on the App Engine is that it was a layer just to make it look like JPA and JDO from the Java side, so people didn't have to talk to the data store engine directly. So
but it's still has limitations.
It's some kind of subset, like some things like inheritance don't work either. But like sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and you have problems with foreign keys and those things. I mean, I don't know if they changed that in the last few months, but I've been working with App Engine like a year ago or something, and I had huge issues with foreign keys, inheritance, and those things.
I mean, that's also an indication why Google introduced an SQL data store as well, because I mean they knew about this limitation and they knew that they can't fix it. Because I mean, if you have a key value store, there is certain limitation you can abstract anymore. So I think that's why they choose to use support as well in SQL data store.
Yeah.
And I think because they know this is not working, they can fix it themselves with this limitation like JPA and JDO. I think so, yes. It's just my feeling or less.
And I think the main thing is that it is something totally different. Perhaps the naming was a problem, because it's a big table, it's a distributed thing, and there you can do certain things because of the scalability. So you cannot fix it, even if you want to.
Well, there are two libraries, Objectify and Twiggy, that do actually implement some of these things.
Yeah, but very cost intensive in terms of data store queries.
Right.
They have to do a lot of queries, and that's the problem. You have to query from all the databases which are distributed, and that's
anything. But the support for these two libraries are pretty limited.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any other ones. But
yeah, because I think you totally have to change your mindset when using it, because this is a distributed system, and you have to use it differently than your normal databases. Otherwise, you have to do to use the SQL stuff, which is now provided. But it's like trying to use a little car to do heavy lifting, or other way around. It's the wrong tool for this.
Actually, it's a really big car.
Yeah, it's that way around. Yeah, like a big car and nothing sits in them, and
getting
so it's
driving lots.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I think it's you have to change your mindset, or you have to take solutions which are already well known and elaborated and known to work. I think if you can't do it otherwise, then you have to use SQL. I think so.
that's why I'm waiting for the support for the Google SQL on Go, which we don't have at the moment. You still have to use Java to access that.
But speaking of App Engine, anybody here use Cloud Endpoints or is like interested in it? Google Cloud Endpoints?
What's that?
That's like the API infrastructure from Google, and they put it on App Engine now. It's now in the trusted testers phase, and it's awesome. So, but
what can you do?
you know, like the Google. No. You know, like the Google APIs has a special stuff like discovery and so, and you can easily like write own APIs leveraging all of these functionality, and then you can like build Android and JavaScript libraries, so they can generate it and with strong typing, and it's very early, but it's awesome. So
this is experimental now, or?
No, it's like in development. So, and now in like alpha state, but it's really promising. So.
Yeah, but unless you're a certified tester, you can't use it at the moment.
Yeah, we could do it tomorrow, so that's why I was asking. Like, yeah.
Any other questions? I have a Java question. No, don't worry, it's not a quiz again. Are there any Java developers here? Or as GVA? Oh yeah, that's okay. So, what I was thinking about, I know, there are a lot of things I hate about PHP and the scripting stuff.
The language?
Yeah, the language as well. But what I actually like about PHP is that you can plug in your stuff. For example, this is what also makes like WordPress and Joomla and all these frameworks, which make them so successful, because you just plug in a module and then it works. No, so you don't have to. There's no effort. You don't have to restart the server. You don't have to install it. You don't have to put it in a library directory and put it on the class path. You just plug it in and it's working. It should actually work. And this is actually what I think it's a big plus of PHP, because it's a scripting language. You just drop in your files and you just reference it there and it's working. And I was thinking about, are there any Java equivalent for it? For example, I know OSGI is should promise or it's promising the same functionality, but OSGI is, I mean, from my point of view, or on the one hand, it's difficult. You have to, it's cumbersome, and I think from my point of view, it doesn't. How do you say it? It's promising a lot, but offering a little, because it's very cumbersome to use it, to implement it, and you have this crap and huge OSGI bundles, and you have to add OSGI everything to use it, and it's still not working perfectly. You see it in Eclipse sometimes, because I mean, Eclipse is OSGI based, and you still have to restart it if you install a plugin. So does somebody know an equivalent to a plugin system for Java virtual machine where you can plug in stuff? I know this is working. You can plug in, because there are like JPF and Java plugin framework, or GPF. But what about unplugging stuff? For example, you have version 1.1 and version 1.2, and you want to switch them. So, or you want to unplug stuff. So, is it? Did you
I
try it
haven't
out?
heard the complete question, but I think with Apache Tomcat, you can do stuff like this.
No, so you can do, so the problem is that you have to compile the crap and then you have to hot deploy it. Okay, so for Java there is the JRebel that takes the class file and then figures out where to inject it and switch it with your existing bytecode. No?
Yeah, but
and then you don't have to redeploy it.
Yeah,
but something more complex like the entire plugin or whatever.
Yeah, for example, I have an application like WordPress, and I want to say I want to have a plugin which is making me an email or incoming filter or and something like this, like a jar.
How do you communicate with this one? If you need to call it from a .java file, you need to recompile this file. No, it's not like that. It has an entry point like PHP, which is on your server somewhere. No.
OSGI offered this. You can plug in stuff, and you have an interface, and you call the interface like a start function, and there's like doing its thing on its own already, because you know it. You know that compile time that you have. If there's a plugin, you call start.
You know beforehand what do you want to call later. No, you just need to plug it in.
Yeah. Well, it's different, right? I mean, the reason it works with OSGI is only that when your whole application is based on an OSGI runtime.
Yeah.
So basically, there's a broker in the middle. One component says, I'd like something that is implements interface so and so, and then the request goes to the OSGI runtime, and the runtime looks, do I know anything that implements interface?
Yeah.
But you cannot. I mean, it cannot work in an application that doesn't have such a runtime between the components, because without recompilation, you don't find the entry point like you said.
But if you have an interface, you have the entry point. I mean, JDF solves this problem. You just have the interface, and you drop in your jar, and it's discovered, and it puts the jar in the class path, and it loads the implementation, what implements the interface, and it calls. But I have the concern that if you have it running once, you cannot unplug it anymore, because plugin needs also to plug in and to plug out. And so if you can plug in and not plug out, it's also a bit difficult.
Couldn't you wrap up this up as services in like a Jetty environment or something, where you have discovery of the API via ports? I believe you can just drop new apps into Jetty.
Yeah, of course. You can create
so
a WAR
actually,
file.
can you just wrap something around this so it emulates what you're looking for without it being?
So for example, you can expose a REST
Yeah.
for a module, but then beforehand you already knew that you are going to build a REST interface there, and you have a mockup currently, and then you plug this thing in and just change your XML config, so you don't have to reload the entire, you don't have to recompile or deploy, and then read it on runtime and then push the request there. No? But that's that's REST. It doesn't have anything to do with Java or PHP.
Just, I haven't heard the beginning of your question. So, I'm not sure if
That's good that you contribute then.
I'm not sure if I did understand it correctly.
Okay.
You want to have some code that you can just
I have
an application, and you can just throw a new jar file in, and
it does
magically you can use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, I used some nasty code in a couple of automation projects that used reflections for this, and then you only need the standard interfaces. So I just implement that standard interfaces that I defined some when ago, and put that jar in the class path. And with reflection, I'm just searching through a certain class path. You can restrict that to package names and see which class file actually implements this interface, and then use reflection to call it.
Okay.
There is one more method, component-based development. For example, WebSphere Message Broker allows you to develop ESQL, SQL that allows you to manage messages and develop components that doing something with these messages. And there is also portals which you can just plug in portlets, but it's whole application.
Yeah, I'm thinking about in the same JVM, having something in one JVM. So his recommendation was, doing this REST service or just inter-JVM communication. So if I have like 20 plugins, I have 20 JVMs running. So yeah, it's also a bit.
Isn't it just dependency injection what you're searching for?
No. Because dependency injection is done before runtime, and I define it before runtime, and it gets injected on startup during runtime.
But you can exchange it, I think, but you have to restart.
Yeah, but you have to restart, and you define it before runtime, and it gets injected at runtime. And what I want is actually like something not injected at runtime, but having something loaded which implements such. I know the interface that it implements. I just want to have loaded it and calling it, and then just unloaded it again.
It's kind of like eval for Java.
Yeah, it is actually.
It is actually.
That's how it works in PHP.
Yeah. I think it's yeah.
And perhaps that's the reason why it's not existing.
And I could implement it to load it. So loading is actually there are quite frameworks like JPF. It's called Java plugin framework, and there are 2 implementations of it, and it works to plug in stuff. So you can just say. You implement interface and you say, oh, my jar file is calling this and this, and I want to call it, and then it's working. But I have to consider that it's if it's running once, you cannot unplug it anymore. So
I think there's something wrong at the start here, because you're arguing that PHP is more flexible because you just replace one file and it just works. But then you argument that you have to restart the JVM to load new. But that's exactly what you do when you're running PHP. You're reinterpreting all the time. You're recompiling your code every time you run it, if you're not using caching.
Okay.
So if the simple way would be to just
restart JVM more quickly.
Yeah, just to run the compiler. That would be the PHP way of doing it. Just running the compiler and then the Java VM.
It's a good point, actually.
Yeah. And the second one is this dynamic loading of classes and also replacing classes. This is already done. For example, it already came up
JRebel.
JRebel is a plugin for Linux, but Tomcat has already Unloading doesn't work so well because, but it should work. But most of the time you get trouble with the class loader and old copies of classes that are referenced, and so you have a memory leak, and because you have an old version of the class, you have the whole class loader in memory, and the class loader has references to all its classes it had ever
loaded. Yeah, exactly.
And if you have this on multiple levels, because you have this memory leak for a while now and keep redeploying, you have, of course you have 20 copies of class loader.
Yeah. Then your kernel gain space gets destroyed.
But in theory, it's possible. You can just unload the class again.
In theory. Okay, thank you. That's a good point with this PHP. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes. I'm more interested in game programming, and Google has something.
It's Play-N.
Does anyone has already done with that before?
We had a talk about Play-N some time ago, and hackathon as well, yes. And well, Play-N is quite powerful if you want to do games for Chrome as a Chrome plugin, or as a web games which are JavaScript based. And Rubio did Angry Birds with Play-N, for example, and it's quite, it has some capability because it uses Box 3D, and it has a UI interface they're quite good, and they also ported Quake to Play-N. But the limitations are, if you're using an Android phone, it has to be quite powerful. So you have to use at least a Nexus, because it's a JavaScript interpreter, it's JavaScript. And on iOS they have really bad support, or not yet very good support. It's still in development. There are a couple of people using it more and more, so it's actually an indication that it will be popular in the future. But currently it's still in development, so it's just an indication that people are using it quite often. It maybe indicates that it will be more popular. But if you want to develop game, I would recommend you something different actually. Currently, at the current moment, not to use Play-N.
Always talking about HTML5 CSS for game.
I would recommend you, for example, get Moi. Moi framework is a Lua-based framework, which is it's like Corona, and it's quite powerful because you can develop your game for Android, for iOS, and it's quite has a performance, and it's well known, and people using it quite successfully. And also you have the possibility to use it in browser as well. So you have these three platforms, and it has a lot of options, and it's also open source, so you can change it, or you can look inside if something goes wrong. This is what you can do with Corona, for example.
If you only want to do Android, I would recommend Untitled.
Yeah, exactly.
It's done by Nicolas Kramlich, who works now at Zynga. So he knows quite good about gaming engines, and he is. I guess it's even fully open source. So it's using some of the former Java 2D engines, which are based on Canvas, and it adds lots of cool stuff on top. So you don't have to mess up with sprites. You can just use them in those things.
Exactly. So if you want to build native, then it's a good option. Any questions? Okay.
Does this crowd have a view on Accenture GXT, the extensions to the Google Web Toolkit? Has anyone used it, other than me?
I had a look at it.
Well, my recipe app that I showed in the video yesterday was built using that, and I kind of followed it. It was kind of interesting and cool. Some new concepts for me. That was built on their 2.2 version. Now I've upgraded to the 3.0 version, and I can't get the thing to work anymore because they changed the entire API. The event model was changed. All the widgets have different parameters. The code needs tremendous amounts of work, so I'm rather annoyed actually.
Okay.
Is the upgrade and the documentation is quite lacking. But so it would have been interesting to hear people sort of had the reaction, oh, this is really cool, and stick with it, or...
That's right, actually. Sorry.
What is a GWT?
XGWT, what it used to be called.
I've only experiences used by
Is anyone using WebGL? Of interest?
No, I'm using a little bit.
Okay, let's quick chat afterwards. I'm looking for Java experiences, that's all.
Okay, any more questions?
We have here one +1 shirt left, lady fit, size 10. So, anyone interested in this? You fit in?
From my girlfriend.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
And maybe it's a good time to say thank you to Litchi.
Yeah, thanks.
He was recording the whole day, the sessions in this room. Yeah, I think we got some ebook pushers from O'Reilly, so I would say we'll give him one for his effort. And
thank you very much.
Yeah.